Morning, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today. How are you? You good? Welcome to day 2. What I'm going to talk about, let me make sure this thick guy is working here. I'd like to go back. There we go. What I'm going to talk about today is how to bring Silicon Valley innovation to Washington, D.C. So I am a tech entrepreneur. I live in San Francisco by Dolores Park, and a couple of San Francisco people. And I want to first talk about sort of why I'm up here, why I care about public service, why I care about government. And so I'm 28 right now. I was born in Pittsburgh in 1984. And my dad was an Episcopalian minister from Pennsylvania, and my mom was a social worker from Yorkshire, England, who was more of a Buddhist, sort of Eastern spirituality in her leanings. Very different. And the thing that they taught me growing up was to give a damn about other people. It was to care about other people and to want to make a difference in the lives of other people. And so I think you can make a difference in the world regardless of which sector of the economy you're in, whether you're in government, whether you're in the nonprofit sector, or whether you're in business and technology. And so what I want to use the rest of my life for, however many years I live, is to use business, technology, government, to invest in solving big human challenges. The big human challenges our country has, the big human challenges our world has. So what I'm going to talk about today are very specific things that we can do, being here in DC, to bring some of the innovative things I've seen as a tech entrepreneur the last 10 or 11 years, and some of the things I'm seeing at the best Silicon Valley companies into the agencies that you work at. And so what have I been doing sort of the last 10 years of my life? I went to UNC Chapel Hill for undergrad, studied economics there, a couple Tar Heels, and then I built a company called iContact. I co-founded it in 2003, and it was an email newsletter company. We had about 70,000 paying customers that would pay us about $50 a month to send out newsletters to their customers, ranging from large companies all the way to the 2008 Obama campaign. And we got up to 300 employees. We bootstrapped for the first 3 years. We didn't take any outside venture capital. And then once we got to a couple million in annual sales, then we raised venture capital. And we got up to $50 million in annual sales by 2011. And in 2012, we sold the company, February 2012, for $169 million to a DC-based company, public company called Vocus. So that was my experience as an entrepreneur. Last summer, I got the opportunity to be a national co-chairperson for a group called Tech for Obama, and got to spend some time in Chicago helping the campaign with email newsletters, email marketing, that type of stuff. And I'm also just finished my first year as an MBA student at Harvard Business School. And so I'm sort of half Harvard MBA, but I'm also a little bit crazy, and so I'm half tech entrepreneur as well. And so now after finishing my first year at HBS, I'm actually going to put it aside for a few years, take some time off to build my second company, which is called Connect, and we're launching that company in September. And so what I'm doing today, I'm building 2 companies. Building Connect, which will be an application for your phone to help you keep track of all the people you know, and I'm building an investment fund called Connect Ventures, being an angel investor in companies solving big human challenges. And we have 20 portfolio companies right now. And so that's sort of a little bit about me, about my background, what brings me here today. I like to work at the intersection of politics, business, technology, and change. Of my 20 investments through Connect Ventures, 4 in East Africa. I've spent a lot of time in Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania, Ethiopia, been near the South Sudan border. I've spent some time on State Department missions to Cairo right after Tahrir Square. And so I've tried to go in and out of being someone who can help on the tech side in the government over the past few years. But let me step back and let me just talk about creativity and innovation and some of the lessons I've learned being a tech entrepreneur, building companies as a young person, and how some of the things we can do as folks in our 20s and 30s to bring some of this innovative thought into DC, and to look back at some of the things that the first administration has done in the last 4 years and then over the last year with innovation. And so let's go back in our minds, if you will, maybe 15 years. And I want you to just remember when you were a kid, when you had that wild-eyed excitement about every single little thing that you did every single day. When you were just absolutely fascinated by the world, you'd go camping with your friends, you'd go to an aquarium or a zoo, and you just be the little happiest kid, and you played. And remember when you made these silly, crazy faces and it was just a normal thing? And I'm going to connect this back to creativity and innovation, of course. But you remember when you made those silly faces? I want you to look at the person closest to you. In about 5 seconds, I'm going to ask you to make the silliest face you can, just to get out of the sort of the beltway normal of sort of pressure. So find the person next to you. I want you to touch the person next to you on their shoulder. Find your partner. All right, get your face in your head. Get your face in your head. And at the same time, when I get to 1, make the silliest face you can. You can use fingers, tongues, whatever you want to do. 5, 4, 3, 2, go. All right. Thank you. No more faces. And so the point is, if I could have your attention again, the point is that in order to be a little creative, in order to think outside of the rules and regulations in Form 3207B, you got to make silly faces to each other. You got to be a little crazy. You got to get that mind out of the normal day-to-day and actually allocate time for innovation, time for creativity. But just keep thinking back to when you were a kid. And you would go out at Halloween and get candy. And you dress up in costumes. When fantasy could be real and you could have tea parties or whatever you happen to do instead of tea parties. I did tea parties. And when magic was possible, you grew up on Disney. You've learned it wasn't true, but you still believed it was true back in '94 because Lion King was awesome. And when you first got that idea of empathy in your heart and when you first wanted to help people and make a difference, maybe you were 12, maybe you were 13, maybe you were 14. Raise your hand if, as a kid, you thought about making a difference in the world. So that's a lot of people. For me, it was my parents. But then when I was 17 in high school, I took this AP economics class. And the teacher there in Bradenton, Florida, where I was growing up, Robert Fletcher, he taught economics from a humanistic perspective. He taught the supply and demand curve crap, but then he taught from a human perspective. He talked about extreme poverty. He talked about what's going on in emerging markets in the developing world. And I started getting interested in development economics. And so when I went to Carolina, I thought I'd be off to try to get a PhD in economics. And then started the company and said, hey, I can be effective in the world by being a tech entrepreneur and using technology as a tool to make a difference. But I think we all remember those days when we were young, when we wanted to make an impact. And so now you're on your way. You're right here in Washington, D.C. You're living in the city of your dreams, the city that you probably wanted to live in for at least 5 or 10 years. And you're doing something, and hopefully you're doing something that matters. But there might be a little bit of a disconnect sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't quite feel right. And I'm trying to win the competition for awesomest slides, so I included lots of animals. But sometimes some things don't feel right, and you lose track of that big picture, of that original motivation you had 10, 15 years ago to just be creative and make a difference in the lives of other people. And you become just like that chipmunk. Like, what the heck is going on? And then you got to go to your work every single day, and there's this guy, and this guy does not work. He just sits there on the federal payroll. He's in the corner. He's got dust on the W key on his keyboard because he hasn't typed it in 2 years. And he's just collecting his money. What is this guy doing? This guy needs to be fired. Compassionately terminated. I don't like this guy. This guy's not cool. And you got this guy. You ever get one of those emails that's got 37 carbon copy CCs on it, and then you get the second one and it's got 49 CCs because cover your ass Jack just put 12 more people on the CC line? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, that guy. He sends one email and he's like, well, if I carbon copy it to 12 more people, 12 people will think I showed up to work today. And so there's that guy that you got to deal with. And I deal with this too in the business sector. This is not just the public sector. This is everything in corporate America, in government, wherever you may be. You got to deal with the lazy guy, the carbon copy Superman guy, and then you got to deal with your manager. Now, the way I found this picture, by the way, I typed in the word, what's the right word? I forgot the exact word I typed in, but there's this awesome website, 500px.com, that gives you these cool awesome animal photos. But this guy is really just very self-confident. And he just sits there, he's like micromanager Mac, and he's just looking at you, and he doesn't quite give you real-time feedback. He's the type of guy that when you do something wrong, he'll write a note about it and then tell you about it 11 months later. You know that guy, if anything? That is what we're dealing with. And so space for creativity withers, and the original connection to why you are here and the mission and purpose in your heart is not always able to be made on a day-to-day basis. Creativity gets slotted at the very end, if at all. And when you actually do go into a brainstorming session, the number one rule of brainstorming, which is to go wide before you decide and do not criticize until you have gotten lots of ideas out, the very basics of design thinking, is completely not even thought of. It's like people over 40 have not heard of the design school at Stanford. It's like people over 40 have not heard of design thinking. Wake up, creativity needs space, and people work in flow, as Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi says, and you need 4 hours to even get into flow, to even think creatively. And so you're also surrounded by this double-speak crap. Like, let's read this. Our mission is to continue to efficiently facilitate diverse methods of empowerment and professionally disseminate performance-based deliverables to meet our customers' needs. What does that mean? What is it? Is that the mission statement on your website? So it's hard to sort of get through the bullshit. It's hard to get through the bullshit sometimes. You know what I'm saying? And so your job is to get through the bullshit. You are Gen Y. You were probably, if you're in this room, born after 1980. And the great thing about being born after 1980 is that you're a millennial, you're in Gen Y, and you don't have to deal with bullshit because we're going to be running this country in 20 years. All right? But you grow up with the internet too, and you have these awesome things called touch telephones, these smartphone things that are bringing innovation and new opportunities so that we can bring our compassion for helping others in an efficient way. And so I know this is probably a cross-partisan and nonpartisan area, but regardless of where you're coming from, if you want to help people, you have to build a government that is efficient. You have to build a government that is effective. And so let's talk about how can government be improved. But let me start actually by recognizing some awesome things over the last 5 years that have happened recently. Let's start with what's going well. Let's start with what's going well. And so this was 3 weeks ago now. I want you to know that you have air cover from the man when you try to bring innovative things into your agencies. Let's see what Barack said. He said, "It makes sense for us to be able to redesign government so that it can deliver on the functions that the American people are looking for. We should all want a government that's smarter, quicker, and more responsive to the needs of the American people." He said this standing next to VP Joe on July 9th, 2013, launching the 21st Century Management Agenda. People have your back. And so he's giving you air cover to be innovative. You can look this up, the Management Agenda for Government Innovation. And when you have a good idea that micromanager Mac stifles, you got people in this city that you can quote and people in this city that you can reach out to. We got the CIO, Steve Van Broekel. We got the CTO, Todd Park, that are doing actually some pretty cool stuff. Todd used to be in the private sector as an entrepreneur in the health field, if you probably know that. And so there have been some awesome things that have come out. We the People, super cool as a citizen. The Presidential Innovation Fellows just brought in their second class of 43 people, and they got some of the best and brightest talent coming in. Code for America has been getting more and more momentum every single summer. They're throwing hackathons, and now we have data. As an entrepreneur, as a tech entrepreneur, data is essential to what I do every day. And now we have 75,000 data sets, APIs that we can plug into as entrepreneurs and create businesses that create jobs. So data.gov is really cool. Good design, actually like thinking about user experience on both mobile and web on some of the new websites. The health insurance marketplace is coming out with a 3-page form in a couple months. And this is 3 or 4 years ago now, but the federal taxpayer receipt actually does add transparency to government. So those are some good things. Things are getting better. But your challenge is to bring the lessons of the internet, bring the lessons of innovation, bring the lessons of mobile into government. If you go to your agency's website this afternoon on your iPhone or your Android and you see that it doesn't look properly on mobile, you got to fix that. You got to take an initiative to figure out how to fix that, because something like 30% of views of internet websites are now on mobile. So here's some 12 ways I've seen, just living up and down the valley, going to companies like Google and Facebook and LinkedIn and Apple and Yahoo, going up and down and sort of seeing some of the best practices where I live today. So number one, awesome workspaces. Why is it that some workspaces in the federal government look like they're Soviet bunkers from the 1960s? You know what I'm talking about, right? And I'm all about being efficient with taxpayer dollars, but if you're not creating an environment where the best and brightest minds of today and tomorrow are able to innovate and be creative and have the time to think, then we're not getting our money's worth as taxpayers. So put a little more money into some color, maybe some transparency, some glass conference rooms, no more cube farms. This is a picture from the D School at Stanford. My girlfriend here lives in DC right now and works at Ashoka, and she's working on bringing some of the, she does recruiting there, and she's thinking, like, how can I take some of the ideas where she went to undergrad, Stanford, and bring those ideas into DC, where she works in Arlington at Ashoka. So how can you get a lot of whiteboards? Like, the number one thing with creativity is you never know when an idea is going to come, and so you got to be able to write on a lot of surfaces. And so how can we get, I actually have a desk where I write at my house in San Francisco that is all whiteboard. I can write on my desk with marker. How can you get lots of whiteboards up and around, not just that small little one that you may have? Managers, they're good managers. Only like 3 things you got to do as a great manager. You got to care about the people you're serving, care about the people that work with you, and you got to give real-time feedback. I mean, the same day. If you're all probably going to be future managers, and some of you may be now, if you see something an employee that works with you does that's not right, tell them that day. Don't write it down on a performance review and come back to it 6 months later. And when someone actually does do something well, tell them. I wear this green wristband on my wrist here. It says, appreciate daily. And as a CEO now, I used to be a CEO of a 300-person company. My new baby's 12-person company, but hopefully we'll get way beyond 300 in the years ahead. I know that I need to appreciate my people daily in order to get the best out of them. Classically condition the people on your team to crave your feedback and to crave your praise. And if you're not getting it, it's really hard to get fired in the federal government. Just tell your boss, like, hey, I want praise when I do something well. Hey, well, I want to learn. I want to get better. I want to get better. I really do. Tell me how I can get better. And there's something that you do in business that's pretty common. And I care about everybody. And if you're letting someone stay in a workforce where they're not performing, you're doing a disservice to them, because they are not able to use their lives to do something where they can contribute. And so letting the bottom 10% or the bottom 5% of performers, even after you've coached them, even after you've given them written feedback, even after you've given them any chance, letting them stay in your organization makes all the good people want to leave. And that's bad for your organization. And so you may not have control of this now directly, or maybe indirectly you do, but when you get there as a manager, you got to let the people go that aren't performing. And you got to give feedback so people know why they're not performing so they can get better. So that's a key practice of innovators. And you got to make processes simple and efficient. I know there's all kinds of opportunities to do that right now here in government. Very simple flow chart. Is it raining today? No. Yes. Take an action. If you can use basic principles of operations management, where you can flow chart out your processes, and then figure out where are the duplicative steps, where are the forms not needed, where are the forms too long, where are people going different places. Just imagine like calling up a call center where you got to type 2 and then 5 and then 7, and you finally get the person on the line and you got to give them your social security number to verify your identity, and then they realize that it wasn't the right person for what you need, so they transfer you to somebody else, and then you got to give your social security number again. It's like, come on, we've had computers for like 50 years. We've had the internet for like 25 years. Like, let's figure this out. And so let's get rid of duplicative steps and processes, make things efficient, because ultimately you can be the most empathic, the most empathetic to your customers, to the people that work with your agency, outwardly facing or inwardly facing, by making things effective and efficient. This is a screenshot of something called HipChat, which is a basic internal messenger. And you need to have IM going in your company, in your organization, in your agency. And you need to have a basic wiki, like a Wikipedia, but for your company, where knowledge is shared. And it needs to be kept up to date by people. And these are free. You can get something like Confluence very, very cheap, or something like HipChat very inexpensively, or whatever the equivalent is. And I was hanging out on this mountain last weekend with my friend Brian, who works for Todd Park in the White House. And he's like, all right, I got this thing coming up on Tuesday. I'm going to share some ideas on innovation in government with Todd. I want to get some of your ideas, he said. And so I gave him this one, because this is the #1 tool I used as a CEO to bring awareness to what was going on to the whole team. And when the whole team knows what's going on, you get better results. And so this is a dashboard from a tool called Gecko Board. You can use KISS metrics, you can use anything like that, and it makes it really easy for non-technical people to set up beautiful looking dashboards. And if you can convince your manager in your area to put it on a big screen and just display it for your department, or even display it for the whole agency, that's great. My idea that I hope to see one day is a real-time dashboard that updates at least once a minute in the lobby, front lobby of every federal agency. I think that would be awesome for transparency and efficacy. We treat customers like God, and you got to figure out who your customers are. Is it the end user? Is it the taxpayer? Is it someone internally? But customers are like God in sort of the world of innovation. And you should study this. You probably have the 5 steps of design thinking: empathy, definition, ideation, prototyping, and testing, and repeating the cycle. Read about design thinking. It's one of the most important things for innovation in the last 20 years. And you constantly improve the user experience. What empathy means from a technical standpoint is you get in the heads of the people that are going to use the services that you provide, and you actually go through it. So you remember that time when you had to get your driver's license and you waited in line at the DMV for 3 or 4 hours and you didn't have the right form, so you had to come back? Like, that's not cool. And I know that that's state government, and I also know that the federal road system is state, or the national highway system is in part state government, and we were able, through raising the drinking age 20 years ago, to add some additional dollars there. And so the federal government does have control on some state policy. So how can we make an Uber app for the DMV, or how can we make things more efficient, user experience-wise, to get people in and out? And this is a new company called Lyft, L-Y-F-T. They're launching in DC next week, and they have these awesome like pink mustaches on their cars. It's like Uber, but it's cheaper. And they actually make the customer experience enjoyable. They give you like a hand pound when you get in the car. You sit in the front seat instead of the back seat. Really cool. But like, you make the customer experience enjoyable for interacting with your organization. That is the key step of innovators. And so I'll leave you today with 7 takeaways for your boss that you can write down, that you can bring back, and I hope you'll remember. Figure out a way to create a real-time dashboard. Get some data, put it in a Google spreadsheet, get it connected to Gecko Board, get a real-time dashboard, even if you're the only one seeing it. Get it working, and then get it up and convince your manager to make it visible. If you're ever, when you're a manager, give daily performance feedback on anything you see, real-time feedback, and ask for it, demand it. When you see something wrong, talk about it right away. Don't let elephants in the room pile up, just get on it right away. That's the only way you can rapidly iterate and incrementally improve. Make processes as simple as they can be. Get rid of duplicative forms. Get rid of forms, just put them all on the web if you can. It is not the most compassionate thing to keep people around that are not improving, that are not performing. Find a way, as you grow in your careers, to remove people who are not helping create an awesome culture. Practice true empathy for the taxpayer, for your coworkers, for the people that interact with your agency. And through empathy, you will create better processes by putting yourself in their mindset. Key to ideation. And know that whatever crazy ideas you may have, that even if your current manager may not be aware of it, or may not be open to it, you have people in DC that have given you the opportunity to innovate and to take challenge, and that's the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, the CIO, and the CTO. And so know that the President has your back with his 21st century management agenda for innovation. I have a book on startups and these practices coming out next spring called the Startup Manifesto. I wanted to really thank you for having the opportunity to bring someone out here, and hopefully I haven't been too rude in sharing these ideas. My email is right here, ryan@connect.com. My Twitter handle is just @RyanAllis. Would love to discuss ideas. I'm probably going to be in the private sector next 20, 25 years out in California, but someday would love to work in government, and I hope to have the chance to work with many of you. So thank you very much.